Yes, it is. Welcome into Warriors Live here on 95.7 The Game. Mark Randy with you as we get ready for Warriors basketball. The Dubs in Chicago getting set to take on the Bulls, and the day has come. Jimmy Butler's Warrior debut is an hour away. Oh, I am excited. I think a lot of Warrior fans out there are excited as well. Let's talk through every angle of this basketball game and about Jimmy Butler over the next 30 minutes, because this is Warriors Live presented by Xfinity. Stream sports from the best seat in the house with Xfinity. Bring on the good stuff. Again, welcome in. Mark Randy with you here on Warriors Live. Dubs at 25-26, getting set to do battle in Chicago against the Bulls, who are 22-30. Both these teams were active at the trade deadline. The Warriors, as I just mentioned, acquired Jimmy Butler. They traded away Andrew Wiggins, Dennis Schroeder, Kyle Anderson, Lindy Waters, and a top 10 protected first-round pick in return for Jimmy Butler. Meanwhile, the Bulls, they traded away Zach LaVine, who went to the Kings as part of that De'Aaron Fox to the Spurs trade. The Bulls got in return Kevin Huerter, Trey Jones, Zach Collins, and a first-round pick, which ultimately was their own first-round pick from this year. That was being owned by the Spurs ever since the Spurs acquired or sent DeMar DeRozan to the Bulls a handful of years ago. Anyway, they got a first-round pick back, some other pieces in the Zach LaVine trade. They're now down Zach LaVine. The Warriors are down Wiggins, Schroeder, Anderson, and Waters, but they have Jimmy Butler back, and Jimmy Butler is playing tonight for the Golden State Warriors. And Steve Kerr has spoken pregame already, and Steve Kerr said that there's no minutes restriction for Jimmy Butler tonight. He did add that he will limit some of the sets the Warriors run, but he didn't seem too concerned. That, according to Anthony Slater. Steve Kerr, quote, "Jimmy Butler reminds me a lot of Andre Iguodala, the way he thinks the game. We need that." That's Steve Kerr pregame on Jimmy Butler. And honestly, I think one of the major emotions that Warrior fans are feeling right now, and you can shoot me a text and let me know if you agree or not, 888-957-9570. I think for me, we can debate about whether we think this experiment is going to work. We can figure out. We can debate till we're blue in the face, really. Does this make them a title contender? We can have arguments, and I can see both sides. And this isn't the perfect acquisition, and this doesn't mean the Warriors are now suddenly competing with OKC and with Houston and with Memphis and with the Lakers, who I think got a whole lot better at the trade deadline, or at least they're a lot more interesting. I don't know about that. The one thing that I think is really difficult to argue is the Warriors got a whole hell of a lot more exciting and entertaining. And the prospect of what this team is going to look like now, how they're going to be different. You get a legitimate all-star to pair alongside Steph and Curry. I'm interested to see how this is going to turn out. And honestly, there's been a lot of Warrior games, specifically the last couple of months, where even if it's, a primetime game, if it's on ESPN, you tune in, you kind of feeling like, well, they might lose this game by 20. Not how you should be feeling tonight. The Warriors on the road, 5.5-point favorites against the Bulls. I know the Bulls not anything incredibly special, especially now without Zach LaVine, as he's now a king at the trade deadline. But the Warriors are a more intriguing, a more exciting, a more interesting basketball team now. And from all the Warrior fans that I've spoken to, whether it's been here on these airwaves or if it's been on Twitter, and you can tweet at me at Mark Grandy on Twitter. That's Mark with a C, Grandy with an I. There's just a renewed sense, not necessarily of optimism, but just excitement. And I know you don't want to just make a move for the sake of making a move, and maybe you feel like, well, the team's more interesting now, but are they better? I think they're better. Time will tell how much better. But this team just needed an infusion of something to get excited about, and this Warrior team is a whole hell of a lot more exciting right now. I want to read you some of the things that Jimmy Butler and the Warriors have said about this acquisition. I'll do that in a second, but before we get too deep in the weeds, let's run through our injury report here on Warriors Live. Today's injury report brought to you by Boxer & Gerson, Northern California's premier workers' compensation law firm, helping injured workers get their lives back for over 40 years. For more information, visit boxerlaw.com. Jonathan Kuminga still dealing with that right ankle sprain. He is out. We do expect an update from the Warriors on Kuminga maybe tomorrow, maybe early next week. He is due for that update. The Warriors promised about a week ago that they would, reevaluate him in another week. We may get an update maybe later tonight, although I would not expect that. Maybe we get it tomorrow or perhaps on Monday on Jonathan Kuminga, but he's still out tonight. Moses Moody, who's been dealing with a low back strain, is probable. He missed the game in Utah. He played on Thursday in LA. Guy Santos, who's been dealing with left knee patella tendonitis, he injured that or exacerbated it on Wednesday against the Jazz. Did not play against the Lakers on Thursday. He is questionable for this game tonight for the Warriors. Meanwhile, a very quick injury report for the Bulls. Lonzo Ball, an illness. Talen Horton-Tucker, an infection in his leg. And Dalen Terry, left knee contusion. They're all questionable. Questionable tonight. The Bulls, Lonzo Ball, Talen Horton-Tucker, and Dalen Terry. Lonzo Ball signing a short contract extension with Chicago ahead of the trade deadline. He was rumored to potentially be available for trade, much like Nikola Vucevic was, although that trade never happened, just like Zach LaVine was. That trade did happen. Lonzo Ball, though, who's been dealing with injuries practically his entire NBA career, has kind of found a little bit of health of late, and Lonzo Ball getting rewarded with a contract extension from the Bulls. He, though, is questionable tonight, not because of an injury, but because of an illness. 831 on our text line. Again, you can join the conversation here. 888-957-9570. T-Dog says the Warriors had to shake things up and do something while teams around them in the West get better. Very good point, T-Dog. Let me read a couple of the quotes that I think give you a sense of an overall sense of the Warriors' reinvigoration. Because this is a team who, after starting 12-3, are 13-23 since. The Warriors, 13-23 in their last, 36 games. That's rough. So this comes courtesy of an article written by Fox Sports NBA writer Melissa Rowland. It's a really good article. I would recommend, if you're a Warrior fan, to type it up, try to find it, and read it. I'm reading it on foxsports.com. Melissa was catching up with Jimmy Butler when the Warriors were in LA against the Lakers on Thursday, and Melissa Rowland, again, was catching up with Jimmy Butler. Green stopped, gave Jimmy Butler a warm hug, flashed a wide grin, then he took off again, and then Jimmy Butler continued. People like that, talking about Draymond, and this is a quote from Jimmy Butler, people like that, man, that's who you want to go to war with. Bleeping dogs that don't give a damn and do anything it takes to win. Draymond later caught up with Fox Sports and said something along the same lines about Jimmy Butler. Draymond says, quote, everybody is afraid of guys who have some blank to them, but guys who don't have blank to them don't win. So that's Draymond and Jimmy Butler talking about each other, and so much of the conversation around the Warriors acquiring Butler has been, you have a lot of Draymond energy in Jimmy Butler. Now you have two of those guys on the same team. There's another portion of the story that I want to read to you. I'm just going to read a whole chunk of it. This is Draymond Green continuing to talk to Fox Sports. He was asked, Draymond was, if he believes Butler could make the Warriors champions again. And Draymond said, quote, I think so. We've obviously got to put it together and figure it out, but I definitely think this puts us in contention to compete at the highest level, 1,000%. You've got a chance to get one of the top 20 players in the NBA. That's incredible. Jimmy Butler said this as well to Fox Sports. And this is, I think, the line that should get you fired up, Warrior fans. Jimmy Butler to Fox Sports, we're going to bring hell to a lot of people. That's how the Warriors feel about this acquisition. And that's what the Warriors have on the plates for them tonight. Can they bring some hell to the Chicago Bulls? Because for the most part, it's been opponents that have been bringing the Warriors hell of late. Can the Warriors switch it up? And can they do that now that Jimmy Butler is here on the roster and ready to play? He will officially make his debut. And Steve Kerr has already talked pregame, saying that he has no minutes restriction. Jimmy Butler does. So we'll probably see him play, around 30 minutes, if not a little bit more. Jimmy Butler tonight. He did say in his pregame availability and his introductory presser before the game on Thursday that he's been working out on his own away from the Miami Heat. So he feels like he's in good physical shape and he's conditioned well. He just hasn't been playing a lot of basketball, which I think for the Warriors' purposes, obviously it was one story for the Heat, but for the Warriors' purposes, good for Jimmy Butler, who's only played 25 games this year. He should be fresher. He should be ready to go. He should be able to carry a pretty heavy load for a 35-year-old because he doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on him for this season specifically. I also think as we try to look at this in a little more of a X's and O's standpoint, where does Jimmy Butler help? Because I was of the opinion, and I think most people were, generally, first of all, the Warriors just needed a score. They needed a secondary, if not at times a primary scorer who can give you 20 points in any given night. And by the way, Jimmy Butler's over-under point total is sitting at 19.5. So if you feel confident, bet the over that he's going to get 20 or more. That's what Jimmy Butler can do. He can do that on any given night. I think if you had to pick and choose the kind of offensive player that you wanted to acquire, in addition to just the 20-point per night scoring, it's a guy who's effective from outside. And Jimmy Butler is not an incredible floor spacer from downtown. But Jimmy Butler does everything else above average. And he does a lot of it really, really well. Obviously, he is elite at creating his own shot, whether it is in the mid-range or whether it is in the paint. He can, again, create his own shot. And as we begin to look at what the Warriors are missing, it was, again, shooting and spacing, which opens things up for everybody. And this really is looking at it from the perspective of Steph Curry specifically. But you just needed someone to take the pressure off of Steph. Because everything has to run through Steph right now. Everything has been running through Steph. Even if it's not Steph taking the shot or Steph getting the assist on the made bucket or creating the opening, it has been through Steph Curry's, the attention that defenses pay to Steph Curry. And now with Jimmy Butler, you can, not that you ever just want to plant Steph, say, in the corner and not have him involved in the play, but if things get hairy down the stretch of a possession and the shot clock's running down and Steph isn't on the ball or he's being doubled and they're forcing somebody else to beat them, Jimmy Butler can do that off of the dribble. You get that a little bit from Wiggins here and there. Maybe you'd get that momentarily for a play, a game from Podziemski. Obviously, you would like to have wished you could have gotten a little bit more from Buddy Hield and others, but that's not really what those guys do. Jimmy Butler is that guy who can score off of his own dribble and create for himself. I think it's an interesting conversation. How exactly is Jimmy Butler going to help Steph? I think arguably, Jimmy Butler has to be, like, in terms of a shot creator for yourself, like creating for yourself off the dribble, Jimmy Butler has to be like the second best off the dribble shot creator that Steph Curry has ever played with. The first one is Kevin Durant. There's no doubt. Kevin Durant is elite at everything offensively, including creating his own shot. It obviously helps when you're 7 feet tall and you can just shoot over everybody. He's elite at that. Incredibly good at that. The Warriors' offense, though, has never been predicated on like that one-on-one, just mano v mano. I'm going to go get my bucket against you. There's nothing you can do to stop me. And honestly, the Warriors have had good reason to run their offense not in that way because they have, an incredibly unique offensive weapon in Draymond who can attack defenses and find shooters. You have two of the best, in fact, I would argue the two best three-point shooters in NBA history in Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. You also had the elite, for 3 years, Kevin Durant out on the floor. You had others who could slash and could cut and could find the openings that Steph and Klay allowed, like an Iguodala, like more recently, Gary Payton, like a Sean Livingston, like a David West, like a Leandro Barbosa going back to the beginning of this run. But none of those guys, again, are guys that, you give the ball to at the end of a shot clock other than Steph and say, go get us a bucket. Steph and KD are really the only two the Warriors have had that are elites, that are really, really good at that. Now you have Jimmy Butler, who's really, really good at that. So I also think it's time for the Warriors offense to adjust just a little bit, at least specifically when it comes to trying to welcome Jimmy Butler into the fold. Because again, besides Kevin Durant, I think Jimmy Butler's the next best off-the-dribble shot creator that Steph has ever played with. You could say Jordan Poole is up there, like 2021, 2022 Jordan Poole. I mean, he was pretty darn good at that as well. I don't think it's disrespectful to say, though, Jimmy Butler is better at that, even at Jimmy Butler's advanced age. Jimmy Butler, when healthy and when locked in, and I think he's going to be locked in because he got the contract extension that he wanted, he is elite at that, and it's going to alleviate so much pressure off of Steph Curry. It's going to be really interesting to see how he fits in. Maybe less so tonight because this is just game number 1, but as the Warriors' offense evolves and as they try to figure out exactly what the offense should look like when they get, more time with each other. I'm interested to see how the offense feels a little bit different with Jimmy Butler on the floor alongside Stephen Curry. We're keeping an eye on that, of course, tonight, but I think those changes would probably come a little bit more down the road, although the Warriors don't have a lot of wiggle room left because they're sitting at 11th place in the Western Conference. And they got to get a move on. There's only 29 games left in the regular season. They are 1 game under 500 at 25-26, and they are 3.5 games out of the 6th spot in the Western Conference. So you got to get a move on, and hopefully for the Warriors' sake, that begins tonight in Chicago with a win against the Bulls. All right, this is Warriors Live here on 95.7 The Game. As always, presented by Xfinity. At home or on the go, you will get the fastest internet to all of your devices. Let's play a little bit of Jimmy Butler here. I think this is worth hearing. Jimmy Butler asked if the extension that he got from the Warriors played a big role in his trade to Golden State and why he was willing to come here.
I'm not going to say that was a big part. I'm happy about it. I am happy about it. I think the biggest part was just getting me to be able to play basketball again. I just want to be able to go out there and do what I've been doing for a very long time and have fun and smile and rip and run and not feel like I'm just doing cardio majority of the game. So I'm very, very, very happy that I'm not getting suspended no more.
Kind of a funny line because, Jimmy, you were like the driving force behind your suspensions. I would just say yes, the contract extension that he got 1 year, 100 or 2 years, $112 million. A big reason why he's happy and why he was willing to be traded here. The Warriors probably upped their offer from what it was previously, and that's why the trade talks had stalled out last weekend. But why they are obviously they got finalized a couple of days ago ahead of the trade deadline. More Jimmy Butler asked about how his personality will fit alongside Steph and others and just what he hopes to accomplish with the Warriors.
I think our personalities are going to be fine. I would like to say that I am a winner. I haven't won it, but I would like to call myself a winner. I do want to win it being a championship. And as far as playing with Steph, I mean, everybody knows he's the greatest shooter in the world, greatest shooter in history. Makes my job a lot easier. I probably got a lot more space out there. But more than anything, I think it's always going to be a team effort. We all got a lot more space out there. So we'll see how it goes.
Interesting there from Jimmy Butler. Let's get to our Take It to the Bank prediction, which brought to you by Fremont Bank, full service banking, no compromises. I don't see this as an incredible shootout tonight, although it looks like Vegas does because the over-under on this game is set at 239 total points scored. I'll take the under 239 total points scored in this one. I know the Warriors just last time out and gave up 120 to the Lakers. The defense, though, was much better in the second half on Thursday. And now you get the addition of Jimmy Butler, who even at the age of 35 is still a very good defender. You put him next to Draymond Green, and you've got the backbone of what could be a really, really good defense. Plus the Bulls, now without Zach LaVine, who they traded away at the trade deadline, so they lost some of their offensive firepower. I know they're not a great defensive team, but let's also not pretend that the Warriors' offense hasn't looked pretty inept at times this year, because it definitely has. Although the introduction of Jimmy Butler should help a lot. We will see how this does look. But I'll go under, again, 239 total points scored in this game tonight. That is my Take It to the Bank prediction, brought to you by Fremont Bank, full service banking with no compromises. One thing to keep an eye on for the Warriors moving forward as well is, what's the starting lineup going to look like? If I were to guess, I would, and I think this is probably going to frustrate some Warrior fans. If I were to guess, I I would say this isn't what I think the Warriors should do. It's what I think Steve Kerr will do. And we don't have a lineup just yet. If I get it here in the next 5 minutes, I'll let you know. Otherwise, you have to wait for Tim Roy, who's standing by in Chicago, and he'll give you the starting five when the time does come. I would guess it's going to go Steph Curry alongside Buddy Hield, then Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, and Quentin Post would be my guess for tonight. I do think, and the reason why I think the Warriors would go Hield over Moody, for example, is because the Warriors feel that Moody is more of a 4 than a 2. And I get where they're coming from because I think Moody a little bit slow laterally, and he has a hard time staying in front of quick 2 guards in the NBA. And I think if you want to argue that, well, Buddy Hield isn't great at that either, that's fair, and I do feel you there. What I will say, though, is with the introduction of Jimmy Butler, I think it makes playing Moses Moody at the 2 a little more palatable because Jimmy Butler still has the ability to guard quick 2s from around the league, and that could push Moses Moody to guarding more 3s and potentially some 4s as well. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Warriors eventually got to that, but I would not expect that to happen tonight. I would suggest, I would bet that the Warriors are starting Buddy Hield at the 2 alongside Jimmy Butler at the 3, Draymond at the 4, and I would think Quentin Post at the 5. Quentin Post, best game of his career, although it's a very small sample, very small sample, came against these Bulls at home a couple of weeks ago. But I would guess it's going to be Buddy Hield in the lineup tonight and not Moses Moody. We will see. I do think if Moses Moody continues to play well and the Warriors get used to what Jimmy Butler brings, they could very well keep Butler at the 3, move Moses Moody back into the starting lineup at the 2 spot. We will see how the Warriors play with that. All right, it's time for our out-of-town NBA game of the night, sponsored by the San Francisco International Airport. Wherever your team goes, you can get there from SFO. 11 games around the NBA tonight, including Celtics and Knicks from New York City. The Celtics, 2nd seed in the East. The Knicks are 3rd seed in the East. This game tips off in a little more than an hour at 5:30, so it's obviously much too late to get to New York City for the game today. But maybe you want to plan a trip to the Mecca when the Warriors are in town, and SFO can help make that happen. Your only opportunity to do that, to see Warriors and Knicks from MSG, that comes on March 4th, and SFO can help you get to Madison Square Garden for Warriors-Knicks, no problem at all. That is our out-of-town NBA game of the night, sponsored by the San Francisco International Airport. Wherever your team goes, you can get there from SFO. Interesting Warrior basketball game tonight as their 7-game road trip continues. They're 0-2 so far, trying to get back to 500 at 26-26 with the win, and it is the debut of Jimmy Butler. I'll be back with you for Warriors wrap-up once this game is over. We'll see how the Jimmy Butler era begins, but until then, it will be Tim Roy taking you through the rest of pregame and the entire game, and then I'll be back with you in a handful of hours here on Warriors Wrap-Up on 95.7 The Game. Warriors Live is presented by Xfinity at home or on the go. You'll get the fastest internet to all of your devices. Dubs and Bulls from Chicago. Jimmy Butler's debut is coming up next. Tim Roy has you covered after these messages right here on 95.7 The Game.